Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord of hosts. Zechariah 4, verse 6.
Welcome to Martial Arts Past and Present with Sensei Ed Briz. Interviews and discussions with martial artists from around the world, along with tournament perspectives.
Welcome to another show of Martial Arts Past and Present. I would like to introduce our guest today. It's Grandmaster David Lee Garrison from Barrington Tiger Academy in Barrington, Illinois. He's an 8th Dan, and I've had the pleasure and privilege of meeting him recently. Grandmaster Garrison, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Is it okay to call you by your first name during this interview, or would you like to keep it all professional?
Well, you know what? It's fun to just go with, we could go with my old fighting nickname, which was LT.
All right. We'll go with LT then. Listen, I got to ask you, how did you get that name?
At my original dojang, with my instructor, Grandmaster Young Kim, was a Youngin University alumni president for 20 years and had a federation in the U.S. that boasted over a couple 100,000 students. We had our top fighting team, which was 3 world champions, which I was one of them. And everybody was bigger than me. I was always the smallest guy. So they like to call me the little tiger. So being a lightweight, and it just morphed into LT. So when I would go and fight, they would say David LT Garrison. So I went by LT.
Wow. Wow, that's great. And what year did you start in the martial arts, and how old were you at that time?
I started in 1974, and I was around 17. I started just before 17.
Wow. And when was that? How long ago?
Oh, I haven't done the math. It's 50 something years?
Wow. Wow, that's a long time. That's a
Yeah, it's
long
fun.
time. What were you doing before you got into martial arts, and what brought you to putting your life towards martial arts?
I probably have kind of a unique story. I was a 3-sport athlete, so I was playing football. I was on a state championship basketball team, and I was a tennis player. So too many concussions in football, not quite tall enough for basketball. The guy that beat me out went to the NBA, so I didn't feel too bad. And tennis
Good.
ended up being the sport that I ended up going to college and playing. And I got into some trouble. I sort of had the McEnroe attitude. I was
Oh,
had a potty mouth and had an attitude. So I was kind of a football player stuck in a tennis player's body. And long story short, I basically was in a match, and a baseball team was using the fence for a backstop. And let's just say I never got in martial arts to learn how to fight. I kind of had that one down. And after 3 times of asking politely and not asking politely, the assistant baseball coach, with foul balls coming on the court, basically called me a couple names, and I politely set my racket down, walked around the court, and proceeded to drop him. And the next thing I know, I had the whole baseball team on top of me, and my coach was screaming at me, and that resulted in not getting kicked off the team since I was the star player. And my dad asked me if I would go to psychological evaluation with a psychologist. And I basically said, no, I'm not doing that. And then the assistant basketball coach, who knew me really well, he said, we know this gentleman, Master Kim, in downtown Elgin, where I started. He's good with people that have kind of bad attitudes. And so my father asked me, and I said, well, martial arts, that sounds like a blast. I'd love to do that. And I had also seen him in the gym where I played basketball when I was in middle school. He used to come into the gym and take the biggest offensive and defensive linemen and throw them around the gym. So I'm like, well, that guy's pretty cool. So he was a judo player and a Tang Sudo and Taekwondo guy, and also a Aikido master. So he kind of had mixed martial arts going on in the 70s, which is pretty rare. But I had no idea what I was getting into. And so I went and took a class and started with him, and been in martial arts ever since. Never quit, never took a break, except for a couple
Really?
injuries.
Wow.
And
Okay.
my second class ever, I lost my temper and I got put to sleep, choked out.
Oh, okay.
And he stood over me and pointed at me as I was laying on the floor, waking up, and said, "You still angry?" And I said, "No, not angry at all." And so let's say I learned my lesson pretty quickly. I think I only got choked out a couple more times after that. So, but
Only a
it worked.
couple?
Only a couple.
Only a
So,
couple. I was going to ask you what challenges you faced, but I think you just answered that.
oh yeah, I had what you call an extreme temper, and my temper wasn't outside of sports. I was a very calm, mild mannered person. Never lost my 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 attitude at all. But once I got involved in any kind of a sport, I was so competitive, and I couldn't stand losing. And I just took it serious. So I didn't like losing, and I pushed it. So that's how I learned to control it. As a matter of fact, when I went to college, my college tennis coach, said, "Well, you're going to have to quit martial arts because you have a partial scholarship, and if you get injured in martial arts, you'd lose your tennis scholarship." I told my college coach, I'm like, "Sorry, either I do martial arts or you have no idea what I'll turn into. So I need to train in order to keep my mental side correct." And he said, "Well, you're taking a chance." And I said, "Well, that's just the way it goes." So I continued training in martial arts all through my tennis career also.
Wow, that's great. Let me ask you this. What's the most common mistake besides what you've done in your life? What's the most common mistake you see beginners make, and how could they avoid it? Now that you've been through what you've been through, what do you
Um,
see now?
I'd say, we used to get all jazzed up because Grandmaster wouldn't always teach every class. And once in a while, he'd come and teach a class, and we get super excited. And next thing you know, we'd be doing basics for an hour and a half. And we're like, "Wait, where's all the cool stuff?" And we didn't realize that was the cool stuff.
Hmm.
And so I would say for people that are starting martial arts, patience is the key word, and consistency. So number one, patience, because you can't um, jump too far too soon. You have to learn the foundation. The foundation is so important. And then once you learn the foundation, then it boils down to consistency. I mean, back in the day when I started fighting, I absolutely loved fighting. And matter of fact, my teacher, he said, "Well, you have to do forms." And I'm like, "Well, that's stupid. I don't want to do that." And
I always
so,
hated forms.
yeah. And I said, "Well," he said, "just do them anyways and, go and have fun." And I said, "All right." So I did it. But I would say when I trained, I used to train for an hour and a half at the dojang. And then I would go home, have some dinner, and I'd train for another 3 or 4 hours almost every day because I had friends and they'd come over to the house and we'd sort of street fight in the living room. We probably ruined a couple living rooms, but it was fun. But I would
That's
say,
that's great.
yeah. Well, we actually used to train with a cannonball, believe it or not. And so we
Did
would,
you?
yeah, we'd train with a cannonball to build our strength. And once in a while, we dropped that thing and it didn't sound too good when it hit the floor.
It's better hitting the floor than your foot.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't want it hitting your foot. If you hit it,
yeah,
if it hits your foot, you know what happens.
yeah. So,
Um,
it was, I would say that's the most important is patience and consistency.
Good. Okay. Why do you think that many kids these days, and even adults, why do you think they quit so fast, so quickly?
There's always the people that just don't want to work that hard because they're like, "Hey, that sounds like a lot of fun." They get into it. Next thing you know, they're like, "Oh, this is really hard work." And so they're just not really up for the hard work. And of course, that's kind of, let's say maybe 10% of the people just don't want to put in the effort. But I'd say 90%, it probably boils down to uh, that whole word I use, which is being, you know, able to train and not get bored. because I think what happens is repetition is mandatory. I tell my students all the time, what number is, muscle memory? What number? How many times do you do a movement to have muscle memory? And they're like, well, I don't know, like 100. I'm like, no, it's 3,000. 3,000
Hmm.
repetitions to muscle memory. You have to have muscle memory or you can't execute it. It's like a football player playing cornerback. They're in college and they're great, and they go in the pros and they're not so great. It's like, wait a minute.
Mm.
And that's what
Sure.
it boils down to, is it's the repetition, it's the speed of the game, it's all those things. So you have to have that ability to adapt. And I think the students, when they join, they say, I mean, they just are like, wow, I've done this enough, I got it. How many times have you taught something, you showed them a move like twice, and they're like, okay, what's next? And you're like, same thing. And they're like, oh
Right.
no, I want to go to the next thing. And so it's that fact that they have to do so many repetitions, I think, hurts it. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love doing the weapons program, because we basically, when the students hit like mid rank around green belt or blue belt, then we say, hey, we can add weapons. And now all of a sudden they get all jazzed again like the beginners. So that
Right.
seems to
Right.
help
Right.
help them from not leaving. So
Yeah. I've noticed, like, with my school and other schools that I've spoken with their instructors, a lot of times what happens is that they want to come in, they want to be Ninja Turtles,
yeah,
and Power Rangers, and then the next thing you know, they find out it's a lot of work, and then they get bored, like you were saying, from repetition. And it's
yep,
repetition that's going to teach you. And then if you don't practice at home, if you're not practicing at home, well, you're going to lose it. Every class you come into is going to be like your first class.
mhm.
Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the real secret too, is we always talk about loyalty as being an important aspect of the martial arts. But I think the loyalty is important to your instructors. Obviously, that's what they're pushing. But I think as students, it's the loyalty to yourself to not give up. I think some people are too easily, especially nowadays, so many people want the instant gratification, and, everybody gets a trophy
Yeah.
baloney and all that stuff. So, you know,
Right.
I, I always said it's like, do you really earn that black belt? Is it something that you earned? I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed. I mean, at my school, I have students that have trained with me for 9, 10 years, and I just won't give them a black belt because their mental side is not correct. So
Hmm.
I feel bad, but at the same time, if they don't truly earn it, I just say, well, then you're not ready. They usually are admitting to their failures too. They know what it is. I've told them over and over, and they still don't want to do it. So
And that's another reason why I don't agree with giving kids black belts,
yep,
because you give them a black belt, they have no idea what it means. They just think
yep.
it's just another level, and that's it.
Yeah. Our teacher used to say, you'd get your black belt, you'd be all happy in your first degree, and you work so hard, and next thing you know, he'd be like, okay, now 12 more belts, or 10 more belts to go, because now you got to go from 1 to 10 and black belt.
Right, right, right. Exactly. You mentioned Dojang before. So what style did you actually start with
I was in
of
a
martial
Korean
arts?
a Korean system. So I
Korean
started
system.
in a
That's okay.
Korean system, which is Dojang. And
Hmm.
then after I got my black belt, um, I ended up morphing into a lot of different systems. So I also fought a ton of karate people because I did open karate tournaments. So we used to go to the karate tournaments and the kung fu tournaments, or even back in the day, they used to have, karate, kung fu, and taekwondo, and the champions would meet each other, which was a lot of fun. So it was
Hmm.
fun to fight the people that won their division, and you got to see who could come out on top. So that was an
Right.
interesting situation too. I mean, in the old days, people that, because my teacher used to say all the time, we'd go and win all the tournaments, and we'd come back and we'd like, hey, we're the best taekwondo guys, and he'd chuckle and laugh, and he goes, oh, really taekwondo, you actually tang sudo. Tang
Oh,
sudo is
okay.
is actually the military version of taekwondo, which is a little more hardcore. And back in the
Uh-huh.
day, how blood and guts was. We didn't even have pads when I started. You'd come home and everything was bruised everywhere. Is
Yeah.
there's no
Well,
such thing as padding.
you're in it a bit longer than me. I think you said 53 years.
Yeah.
So you have 10 years on me. I started in 1982. But unlike you, I have taken breaks in between, a few years here, a few years there.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I really enjoy martial arts. That I want to continue to do it. But I tell you, after my first class, I quit. And then I came back again. I said, no, I'm going to do this. So I came back again. And then I took a few more classes and I quit. And then I came back a couple weeks later and I did it again. And,
Oh,
it just,
you caught the bug.
I caught the bug. Exactly. I said, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to continue this. I don't care what it takes. And then, I would go for a few years, take a few months off, go back for a few years, take a few months off, and I would just go back and forth with it. And then it got to a point where, about maybe 25 years ago, I've been doing it ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it
So,
is. You just if you fall in love with it, the true, you know, one of my friends, he always says, not everybody gets it in martial arts,
mm,
but when you get
right,
it, you obviously get it. So when you get it, then become a lifer.
right, right. So, okay. So what other types have you? You said you studied a lot of types of styles, I should say, of martial arts. What styles have you taught?
Well, before I talk about what I taught, um, the basically what happened was when I was a brown belt with my teacher, he called me in his office one day. I was fighting all over the country, even in color belt rank. I was going to the U.S. Open and the Diamond Nationals and the Battle of Atlanta, tournaments in Florida, New York. I mean, I was everywhere there's a tournament, I'd go. And it was funny because my teacher would be like, "Hey, there's a test this week." And I'm like, "Sorry, sir, I can't test. I'm fighting in, Minneapolis this weekend." So I really loved the fight. So I was going everywhere. And then being an open-minded Korean, which was really cool because a lot of the Koreans are not very open-minded. Um, he realized what I was, and I was sort of a prodigy when it came to weapons. So,
So
um,
LT, before we get into that, I do want to
yeah,
get into that. But before we
okay.
get into that, how did I mean, I know my instructor. If I told my instructor early on, well, I'm not going to do this. You're asking me to do this. I know if I asked, I get knocked out. Okay, if I went against anything that he said, he just took it. Your instructor just took it and said, okay.
Actually, he was very much like that. But what happened was, I think he saw the type of person I was, and he understood me very well because I
Hmm.
didn't just, get my black belt right away. I was kind of slow to get my rank. It was over 5 years. And like I said, I was training like every day, and I took it really serious. But when I
Okay.
was, when I got to a certain rank, he called me in his office and he said, "Look, I want you to go get the good stuff, and I want you to bring it back." So that's kind of what the bring it back thing was, the reason I got the leeway to be able to go and learn. And the weapons
Okay.
was what really made it happen.
Okay. And I definitely want to get into the weapons, but do you see martial arts as more of a physical practice or a spiritual journey or a combination of both?
Um, we used to get asked all the time at black belt tests, state the difference between sport and art. So you have the sport side. Obviously, the ring fighting is more of a sport. It actually has rules. It's not like a street fight. Um, the art side is the spiritual and the side that really counts. And then what we used to always talk about is that there was three levels that we were always taught. So there was the spiritual, there was the mental, and then there was the physical. So you had to have the triad, the three levels. As a matter of fact, my original art was three styles. So it was Tang Sudo, Hapkido, and then Judo and Jiu-Jitsu. So we just basically did the three levels. So we did stand up, we did ground, and we did joint locking. So it was that ability to have the three sides to the equation. And that's what I think made a difference.
It's a
Um,
good combination.
being balanced, because Aikido, Hapkido, China, they're all the same stuff, just different packages. So, and the different ways they do it. So,
I see you have a long list of achievements from your years in the martial arts. If you don't mind, I'd just like to read a couple of these things that I have in front of me,
for sure.
and I need my glasses for that. But I see we have you're the owner and the head instructor for Barrington Tiger Academy, Asian Martial Arts Hall of Fame 2016, Action Martial Arts Hall of Fame 2015, National Weapons Champion 7 times. AKF Grand Champion, Black Belt 11 times, consultant to the entertainment industry, international instructor and demonstrator, board breaking documentary on the Discovery Channel, Black Belt Man of the Year in 1996, Hapkido Instructor of the Year 2007. Uh, wow. And then it goes on here to say Garrison Black Belt graduates include professional athletes such as Hollywood stuntmen, leading professionals and corporate executives, world-renowned yogi, and United States ambassador. Wow, you've got a nice list of achievements here.
No,
All I have before you say anything else, all I have is I got black belt of the year 1 year. That's all I have in
nice.
mind. So go ahead.
Well, I was. It was interesting that when I first got my first dan, and I was helping the master in his office, and they had the awards for fighter of the year and forms of the year and weapons of the year, and it was interesting because I was listed for all three, and the master
Wow.
goes, "Well, we have to share these awards, so we give you fighter this year." But I always prided myself in being dominant in the in every category, not just one. Um, I, uh, I enjoyed board breaking, but after a couple of injuries, I didn't really focus on board breaking. I'm not exactly the biggest guy, but I did it and I enjoyed it. One of the ones I did that was really fun, I had at a tournament, I had my hands tied behind my back. One of my students tied my hands behind my back. I had boards on both sides of me. Then a guy sitting in a chair, and behind him was a guy standing on a platform, and then he was holding three boards. So I did two head breaks, and then jumped over the guy sitting in the chair and broke three boards. And I thought it was pretty darn good. And the crowd was clapping, and it was great. And I ended up with second place and a sore neck. And I'm like, wait a minute, possibly. So
Something's wrong here.
there you go.
What's the second?
Well, we all know we've if you competed on the open circuit over the years, it was interesting because like the first time you would fight in a tournament, you wouldn't get as many points as the second and the third and the fourth time. So you kind of had to establish yourself to get your name on the board. And then I learned very quickly if I was in a Japanese tournament or a Chinese tournament, you didn't walk in there with a Korean patch on your uniform.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
had to be sort of eclectic. So
Yeah, I can't say I was pretty good at throwing knives. It's just I had gotten first or second place one time in a competition with throwing knives. It's just that everybody else was a lot worse than I was.
yay.
So that's how I won because I was bad, but they were worse. Listen, you were saying before about you were a prodigy with weapons by your first instructor. Um, and you currently teach 10 weapon uh ranking system, a 10 weapon ranking system at Tiger Academy and also virtually at multiple schools. This all sounds interesting to me. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, basically, what it is, it's a program that any school can add to their system. That's basically, I call it the MMA of weapons. So when I started in the 70s, if one person did judo and one person did karate, they weren't supposed to talk or be friends or anything because the idea was you're supposed to do one system and that's it. And of course, with the advent of Bruce Lee, everything started to change. That's kind of where I got my original philosophy. Those of us that I'm sure you were a big fan of Bruce Lee's too. And he
Isn't
was all
everybody?
about, Yeah, everybody. So he was about taking what was valuable for you and putting it to use. So what I was telling you before was I ended up, my instructor had me teaching other Korean masters weapons, and I was at first like, I'm not that good. But he goes, no, he's like, you're better than all these guys. So I ended up teaching them. And then after that, in '84, I started with Dan Inosanto. Used to go to California and then see him a lot for training. And he was a Filipino Kali guy. So I ended up getting into Wing Chun and Muay Thai through him. So I added that to the curriculum. Then we ended up, then I ended up training with Tadashi Yamashita because Yamashita was the guy in Octagon that did the rope kamas. And I love kamas, and I especially love the rope kamas. So I ended up doing rope kamas, which is sort of a forgotten weapon nowadays, but it's really amazing when you're throwing those sharp weapons around your neck and between your legs, people kind of gasp. So it's pretty interesting. My teacher was always like, I want you to put a piece of tape on the blade. I don't want you to bleed in front of everybody if you get cut. Well, when I went to Korea, I had a demo match against a gold medalist over there. And then after that, he said, well, why don't you do your rope kama form for the Olympic Korean judo team and Olympic taekwondo teams were both there. And I said, okay. And he goes, do you have did you put the tape on your blade? Because he was always afraid of me getting hurt, right? And I'm like, no, sir, no tape. He goes, okay. He goes, good. Because I said, not in front of these guys. There's no way. I don't want to have anybody have any way to put it down. Of course, nowadays everything is made with a flat edge. So nothing. But back in the old days, if you wanted to do a weapon, you kind of just grabbed something sharp and did it. So
And that was it.
And that was it. And then I got into the katana. Did a lot of katana. Trained with 3 grandmasters from Japan, and I'm also really good friends with Dana Abbott. And so I've been doing sword with him for many years. He's sort of the top sword guy in the country. And so I was able to get involved in many different arts through the weapons. And, when you're involved, you're involved. And then in 1999, we actually created our own form system with 40 masters on top of a mountain in Utah. And when we were creating all the forms, we ended up incorporating hard styles and soft styles into the forms. So it was a mixture, which is really cool. So they're mixed forms, which is kind of rare. But the weapons program that I've been running, it's been over 10 years now. It's been very successful at my school. I started doing it 1 day a week, and it got so crowded I had to go to 2 days a week. So I have a beginner and an advanced class. The weapons we cover are single collie stick, because I teach all the angles of attack with the collie stick first. Every weapon is based off of its characteristics. So the characteristic of a weapon is either a straight line, a pivot, or flexible. So, for example, katana is actually a pivot weapon because you keep your hands separated and it moves like a pivot. Hence, the tip of the weapon moves quicker. Then the second weapon is bow staff, which is super popular. Every style does it. The third weapon is nunchaku, which was my original best weapon that I did competitions everywhere with, and I was a big double nunchaku guy. Then the third weapon is tonfa. The fourth weapon is boken. Then after boken is sai. Then kamas. Then double kali sticks, including strips, takeaways, and disarms. Then the next one is the Chinese broadsword. So I've been going to the Shaolin Temple now for the last 15 or 20 years, which is really fun too. But a great relation with the Shaolin Temple, so we can do Chinese weapons. And then the last weapon in the system is the katana, and we actually do live mat cutting for graduation. So it's really neat. They get to cut.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun.
They get to cut the rice mats. We soak them in water overnight, and then put them on a bamboo pole, and they slice them up. And if they don't do clean cuts, they don't pass.
That's great, and that's how it should be.
Yep.
That's how it should be. It should be clean cuts. I mean, if they practice, they should be clean cuts.
Yep.
Of course, it does depend on how sharp the blade is.
Well, you got to have a good weapon. No question.
That's right. That's
You know,
right.
I have a 450-year-old Wakasashi sitting behind me, and I was always afraid to use it. And Dana Abbott's like, "You got to cut that thing." He goes, "It's made to cut." He goes, "Just take care of it." He goes, "You won't hurt it." I'm like, "Really?" So he goes, "Cut." So I took it and I cut with it. So it's so fun. So
Yeah, yeah. Like we did Bill for his birthday. We
yeah,
gave him a sword and he cut his birthday cake.
absolutely. Yeah, Bill's great, isn't he?
Oh yeah,
I
Bill.
love Superfoot. I've known him since 1981. So
Yeah,
I was on a fight card with him, and I met him afterwards, and we've been friends ever since. So
yeah, I met him about 12 years ago, but we just recently became friends.
nice.
But I met him 12 years ago. I did one of those I did one of his seminars for the stretching.
Uh-huh.
Did you ever
Oh
take a
man,
stretching seminar?
oh yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
remember that one for a couple days.
Couple of days. I couldn't walk for a week. I was able to do almost a full split that day, but after that, I
Nice.
couldn't walk for a week.
Yeah,
I
that'll
feel like
get
I
you.
was abused.
Yeah,
And I like to bust his chops about that. I'm like, Bill, you know what you did to me? He goes, I didn't do it. I said, yeah, you did. You should be proud of it too.
that's right.
I'm gonna
Uh,
have him on soon too.
yeah, he's the best.
Anyway, yeah, he is. He's a good guy. And he's funny too. As a matter
Oh,
of
and
fact, he's very
oh, by the
funny.
way, the weapons program for other schools, if they're ever interested, I'm telling you, it's really amazing because it keeps the kids from quitting. And the other thing that's interesting, UCLA did a study about 5 years ago, and they tested every sport, every activity, every playing chess, reading books, everything. And they did cognitive function and brain waves on children. Now, weapons training is the only thing that increases brain size and cognitive function by 12%. Nothing else on planet Earth makes a kid
Interesting.
smarter than weapons training, which
Very
is to
interesting.
me is very good because that means a school owner could actually go out there and say, "Hey, you want your kids to be smart? They need to be doing this weapons program. They'll be a smarter kid," you know. And that's not blowing smoke anywhere. That's a fact.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see a lot of parents going, "This is great." And I can see a lot of parents going, my kid with a weapon? I don't know about that."
Well, the sad part for me is I wish there was a different word because everybody, when I say I teach weapons, they're like, "Well, what caliber a weapon are you teaching?" I'm like, "No, no, no, no,
Bazooka.
not firearms." Yeah, bazooka. Yeah, that's my
All
son.
right.
He's special
Oh,
forces.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said that's my son. He's special forces, so He's a recon marine. He does the hardcore stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I never played with any of that stuff because I wasn't in the military, so I don't know anything about it. But anyway, listen, I would like to touch for a few minutes. I was hoping to spend a little more time on it, but we have had a nice conversation here. So I would like to take a few minutes on something that I was introduced to recently and you're involved in. It's called the Super Patch. I would, if you could just take a minute or so to explain the Super Patch and what it's about.
It's kind of a little bit tough for people to get it so far, but there's 18 NFL teams and probably half of the UFC fighters and many professional athletes are using it. They have about 15 different patches for all different modalities. The pain patch is really great. It's called the Freedom Patch. It's really amazing. That one worked on my dad, and which was great because he was in a ton of pain and nothing worked. I mean, he got addicted to OxyContin and he was in his 90s. And when that thing where I didn't think it was going to work, and it worked on him, and I'm like, wow, what the heck? And then now they've done studies. So the new studies that they came out with um, are showing that the patches, like for performance, there's a 22% increase in power. So in other words, if you're, let's say, picking up a heavy weight, you're beating that your heaviest lift by 5% immediately. Or if you're
Wow.
you're trying to run a 40 time for the NFL and you're at a 4.5 4.5 40, all of a sudden you're at a 4.49 40. And it's just like it's amazing when you see these results are like instantaneous. They have them for focus for kids that can't focus. The one for performance is actually I have one here. It's called the Victory Patch. Just to give you an idea, there's
Okay.
like 28 in the pack. You wear it on your arm for 24 hours, and you take it off. Now, the great thing about it, this is the part people can't understand. There's nothing in it. And they're like, well, then how does it possibly work? Well, each patch sort of has a fingerprint, and the fingerprint touches your skin. And the word they use for this, or the name they call it, is VTT, which is virtual tactile technology. So basically, it's the touch of the skin. So the skin's the largest organ in the body, and it basically communicates with the cortex of the brain, and the brain basically does the job. So once again, it works. My wife and I are calling it patch and prayer, because we always believe that we can put the patch on and we say a prayer for you and you're going to be set.
Now, you said there's nothing in it. You mean no narcotics, like a non-smoking thing or anything like this? There's no narcotics in it. Is that what you're saying?
They have a patch called Kick It for like beating addictions. There's nothing in it. There's zero. It's just a piece of plastic that basically, like I showed you, just a piece of plastic that goes on your arm, and it sort of has like ridges in it, and the ridges communicate with your skin and sends a message to the brain. This is basically cutting edge 21st century science. It's a brand new thing. And, be honest with you, I didn't really believe it when I first saw it, but now I've seen enough results and I've seen it work on people that it's amazing. I had a lady come into school that had a fresh ACL surgery. She could barely walk. It was one of the students' parents, and she was in massive pain. And I'm like, well, what about your pain meds? She goes, oh, I throw up taking those. They make me sick. So I'm just bearing the pain. And I said, well, here, take a couple, freedom patches for pain. Next day, she came back to the school. Her kid wasn't even in class. She goes, I need to get some of those. They work great.
Yeah.
So, and you're talking,
that's good.
This is post-surgery stuff. So it's a big deal. No, there's no contradiction whatsoever. You can't, it works.
That's great. We're going to be talking more about the super patch in future interviews and future shows with different people and so on and so forth. So we'll have more information for everyone about the super patch as we go on doing more shows. LT, what do you hope your contributions to martial arts will be remembered in the future?
That's an interesting question, because you never think you're going to be at your end. You're always focusing on the next thing, right? But for me, I think it's I just want to keep the arts mixed but pure, if you understand that. Mixed but pure. So in other words, I love the cross training. So in other words, like at our school, we have our stand-up classes and that, but then when the kids get farther along, we also have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. So they can morph into more grappling if they want to, or they can morph into the weapons, or they can do both. So the doors are open to them to be able to do whatever they want. I think the main thing I want to do is I don't really love some of the stuff I see on the open circuit stuff. I'm not crazy about gymnastics and martial arts, because throwing a backflip, I don't know that's how exactly going to win you a fight, unless you're going to maybe kick them in the chin on the way up, but that's going to kind of mess up your backflip, I think.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that some of the flashy kicks and that are going to really win. I mean, everybody loves to jump. I learned the hard way that jumping's a bad idea. Jumping is when I always tell the students, you weren't born with wings. So you don't want to be flying unless you want to get taken down quick. So
God didn't give you wings, so don't try to fly.
Yeah, don't try to fly. Stay grounded. Grounded. I always tell the kids, where's your power come from? Power comes from the ground. How can me being, when I was fighting at 150 pounds, how am I taking down a 225-pound guy in full contact? The way I did that was I used the ground. I used the transfer of energy. That's how I was able to do what I did. It's not my power. It's the way I do it. And I always tell I used to get guys like, well, how come you're always the one that knows the right way to do it? I'm like, well, because I was just lucky. God gave me the ability to recognize what works and what doesn't.
Right. How about this? If people want to know more about you, how can they find you?
Well, my website is garrisonweapons.com. There's a lot of stuff on there. You can contact me, but also my email is akftigerma@gmail.com. So you can send me an email and I'd be glad to get back to you. And then the patch, if you're interested, is also tiger3.superpatch.com.
Okay. And the other way, you're on Facebook?
I am on Facebook. Garrison Weapons is on there. Barrington Tiger Academy's on there, and Master David Garrison's on there. So
Right.
I'm not a big Facebook person, but it's okay.
But you have it.
I have it.
I tell you, these days, I'm not big on social media either. I mean, when you think about it, I'm doing a podcast, right? But
Yeah.
that's why I have a producer, because I have no idea what I'm doing. So, but these days you have to have it in order to let people know.
Absolutely.
You know, Grandmaster Garrison, I want to thank you so much for allowing me to interview you today. I've enjoyed this time together, talking, and hopefully, if you enjoyed yourself as much as I did, then maybe you'll come back again in the future.
Yeah, sounds like fun, and I just want to see, martial arts stay pure. And I think the old school ways are good ways. And, and I just don't want to see people just getting rank or being promoted just because they put in the time. There has to be legitimate skills in the world, and that's what's important, I think.
No belt factories.
No belt factories, absolutely.
Right, absolutely. I agree with you on that.
And I'll tell you, to do that, you don't, like my teacher used to tell me, if you're teaching martial arts to get rich, good luck. So
that's so true.
Yeah.
That is so true.
So
you'll never get rich on teaching martial arts. Never.
Right. And if you do, you're probably selling out. So
yeah. I want to thank you again, Grandmaster Garrison, and hopefully we'll have you back on again soon. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Have a great day.
Ed, it was great meeting you down in Florida, and I think we're going to have a long relationship. And it's really awesome what you're trying to do, because I like the idea of keeping things the way they should be.
Thank you, and that's why I do this podcast. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
All right. As we say, kamsahamnida, which in Korean means thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. To learn more about us, visit our Substack at martialartspastandpresent.com. If you would like to support us, go to patreon.com/martialartspastandpresent. If you like the content and have not yet subscribed, you can find us on all of the major platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube.